Hey everyone, this is my X-Men Apocalypse vlog. There are spoilers in this review. Well, I have to agree with what Gene said. We can all agree that the third film is the worst one, or at least in this case, the weakest of the trilogy. This is X-Men Apocalypse. It is the final movie in the prequel trilogy of X-Men films, although they have said there will be another one. It's set in the 90s, and given that teaser at the end, I think we know who the villain could be. He's someone pretty sinister. Let's talk about X-Men Apocalypse. Let's talk about the actors first, starting with James McAvoy as Professor X. Unfortunately, my big problem with this film is I don't feel it was very well acted. I think by this point, a lot of the actors were just kind of phoning in their performances, and also they weren't given much to work with in some cases. McAvoy's a prime case. I think he's a good actor. I think he did a good job in the first two films, and I think he was trying to do a good job in this one. But there's only so many times you can hear McAvoy tell Fassbender, "There's good in you." And, I know that sounds like Ben Kenobi, but I don't do McAvoy. It's the third film in a row where he's pleading with Magneto to be good and join the X-Men stuff, and it's all stuff we've seen before. My favorite bits with Professor X were when he was tripping over himself after reuniting with Moira. I like that kind of awkwardness. We don't normally get to see that with Charles. And I wish we'd seen more of him teaching the next generation, like he did in First Class with his first crop of students. There were also other teachers at the school besides Beast, and we didn't really know who they were. I would have liked to have known who they were. But that's a larger story issue. McAvoy was good, but he just didn't have much to work with in this script. Michael Fassbender was one of the two better actors in this film. He really brought a lot of depth to Magneto in this film. It harkened back to First Class, where he was trying to come to terms with this great tragedy in his life. He really gave a good performance when his wife and daughter accidentally get killed. He's got all that rage and then all that grief and remorse and is this what you want? Am I meant to be a monster? It really felt real, and that's what I look for in a performance, even in a comic book movie. And then in the later half, when he becomes a horseman, he was just kind of acting numb, and I think that was kind of like a PTSD choice. He's just kind of numb and dead inside after this great tragedy and resisting any attempts to heal him. He kind of wants to hurt. He wants to have that pain and be punished. And Michael Fassbender did a great job in this film. He does a good job in almost every film I've seen him in. But this was one of the few saving grace performances of this movie. Speaking of actors who phoned in their performance, let's talk about Jennifer Lawrence, who really, I felt, just wasn't having. It was supposed to be this inspirational figure to the mutant community, but was kind of rejecting that. But her idea of acting in this film seemed to be squinting. No, I'm not scared, but I'll tell you what happened. When I was emotional, and it's like, that was it. She squinted sometimes when she wanted to emote. That was... Then Mystique is one of the meatier parts. She has a lot to do in this trilogy, basically because Jennifer Lawrence has become such a big star in such a short time. But it really felt like she was just phoning it in. There wasn't a lot of emoting going on. And I almost think the part of Mystique suffers by having such a big name performance, because she can kind of put her foot down and say, I don't want to do all that blue makeup. So Mystique in this trilogy has spent most of her time as a white blonde girl as opposed to a blue-skinned, red-haired girl, which is the exact opposite of the original trilogy when Rebecca Romijn played the part, and she barely got to be a white girl in that. It seems like for all her talk of accepting being a mutant, she spends all her time not being a mutant, until the very end, when she's kind of forced into the blue role and then never gets out of it, and I think maybe that was meant to symbolize, yes, she's accepted her place in the X-Men now, as well as being a mutant, but I don't know. It seems like there were a lot of cheap excuses given for why she wasn't blue skin, and that was just kind of Jennifer Lawrence saying, I don't like doing that part of these movies. Oscar Isaac as Apocalypse, I liked the makeup, I liked the performance, I thought he was great. I thought Oscar Isaac gave the other great performance next to Michael Fassbender in this movie. He just played an unapologetic, larger-than-life supervillain, and not many people can do that. Tom Hiddleston as Loki is maybe the other one. But he just had fun with this. And if you think about it, if you were born into this primitive society and had more power than anyone around you or anyone before you, you probably would consider yourself a god. You probably would think you were given all this power for a reason to use it. He's causing mass destruction. He's giving these large speeches, and I think Oscar Isaac was loving every minute of it. It's a really fun part, and I think he just ran with it, and one of the best performances in the film. Nicholas Hoult as Beast. He had one scene I liked where he kind of gets sarcastic and bitter because Mystique is back once again for Magneto and not for him. But after that, he was just a special effect for fight scenes and stuff. He didn't really have much to do. Rose Byrne was back as Moira, and I was excited to see that they brought her back from First Class after skipping Days of Future Past, but then they didn't do anything with her. She had no point in that movie. I mean, it's like, okay, she had her memories taken away, and the joke that everyone remembers but not her kind of got old real quick. And then there's no payoff. She gets her memories back and we don't see anything. Do she and Charles reconcile? Does she tell him to go to hell for doing that to me? I mean, there was no, a lot of things in this movie never paid off, and that bothered me. Lucas Till was back as Havoc, and at least he had more than just an extended cameo like he did in Days of Future Past. Here, he kind of plays opposite of what Scott Summers is. Scott is the angry, out-of-control one, whereas Havoc is the in-control one who's learned to tame this awesome power within him. His sacrifice seemed kind of pointless other than to change Angry Scott into Mopey Scott. But again, we'll get to Scott in a minute. I guess I'm saying he played a good contrast to Scott, but beyond that, his character didn't seem to have much of a point. Like going to the CIA, or then he destroys Cerebro and then gets himself killed. That's kind of it. He had stuff to do, but it kind of felt like he was taking Beast's role from Days of Future Past, where he's Charles's companion, driving him around and stuff. And maybe if they had given that to Beast, then Nicholas Hoult would have had more to do. Evan Peters was back as Quicksilver, and I don't think his fast motion scene was as good as Days of Future Past, the whole rescuing the kids from the mansion. It didn't have all the funny bits like the Pentagon scene did. Well, not as many, anyway. Not as many like little beats, or let me stop and do this. Let me stop and steal your hat, let me push things out of the way. It's just, I'll leave my Twinkie hanging and go. What would have been great is if he picked the Twinkie back up at the end, kept eating. That would have been funny. After that, then they had this whole drama where Magneto's my father, I gotta find him. Oh, I found him. Hi? I'm not gonna tell you. Again, no payoff. There better be a fourth film so we can get some damn payoff. Let's talk about the young X-Men. Ty Sheridan and Scott Summers. Even in the comics, there seems to be two Cyclopses. There's mopey, rule-following Cyclops and angry Cyclops. Here, we start out with angry Cyclops. Then the death of his brother makes him mopey, upset Cyclops, who will eventually grow up to be rule-following Cyclops in the original films. I'm not a huge Cyclops fan. I never have been. Stuff with him and Jean was okay. Nothing to write home about. Dear Mom and Dad, met a redhead, insulted her, then I liked her. Lana Condor is Jubilee. Cool name. Thanks for coming. Cody Smith-McPhee as Nightcrawler. I liked him. I liked the fish out of water, I want to fit in, kind of naive, wide-eyed Nightcrawler in this film. But why did nobody mention that he had the same teleporting powers as well as the same physical appearance, aside from the blue skin, as Azazel from First Class? I wanted one scene where he sees Beast and Mystique, just looks at him, and then just kind of looks at her and goes, it was the one time. Somebody should have mentioned, hey, I knew a red-skinned guy with a tail who could teleport. Nobody mentioned that. That bothered me a little. Sophie Turner as Jean Grey. I thought she did a fine performance. Her accent as an American was okay. I wish we'd seen more of why the other students kind of kept their distance. She has bad dreams, really? That's why she's ostracized? We needed more of that. We needed more of why she, who should be the most popular kid there, wasn't. Even if it was just another kid saying why they didn't like her. I did enjoy that end fight with Apocalypse when she unleashes the Phoenix inside. I like the whole walking on air thing. That just took me a moment to register, and I like moments like that where something's happening and it doesn't hit you right away. And then just destroying Apocalypse and him kind of almost accepting it as, it's his survival of the fittest mantra, just seeing that this greater power of destruction and rebirth was now there beyond him. The Four Horsemen, my problem with them is they were primarily there just to look impressive. These were not great acting roles. These were like Darth Maul roles. Yes, they needed to look cool and be able to fight. Olivia Munn. Olivia, you turned down Deadpool for this movie? Morena Baccarin had much more acting in Deadpool than you did in this film. And she was kind of the only real villain at the end. She was the one who wanted power. We never understood why she threw in with Apocalypse. It was just kind of like, oh, I can help you find people and we can be more powerful. Well, what was that all about? I did like the guy they cast as Caliban. He looked like Caliban. Bald, big eyes. But Caliban isn't a creepy German. Ben Hardy as Angel, again, cool look, cool appearance with the metal wings and all, but We knew nothing about his character. We didn't know why he was there. It was not an acting part. It was a special effects part. Alexandra Shipp as Storm, at least in the beginning when she meets Apocalypse and has some lines and is talking, that performance I found really engaging. I wish we'd seen more of that Storm. But again, as soon as she's made into a horseman, it's just like... It's all about appearances, not actual acting. I wish we'd had more of that early Storm. I would have enjoyed Hugh Jackman's cameo a lot more if it hadn't been spoiled in that last trailer. I really wish they'd left that off, but they wanted to get people excited to see the movie. I like that he was in the Weapon X outfit from the Barry Windsor Smith story, although I wish it had been the full helmet, but you don't want to cover Jackman's face up. Having Josh Hellman back as Colonel Stryker and having the whole Alkali base back felt like it was not only tying into the original movies, it felt like they were reinforcing that the Days of Future Past was this new history from the original X-Men trilogy. We've got Wolverine interacting with the young X-Men 20 years early. We've got the X-Men at Alkali Lake base 20 years early. So that felt important in that they were reinforcing the new timeline. And at least Wolverine's cameo served a purpose other than just like a, let me drop an F-bomb and give everyone in the theater a laugh. Here, at least he kills the soldiers, kind of freeing the kids to get into the control room and free the other X-Men. This film had a really good soundtrack. I really was enjoying the music at times during this movie. So, good score, good soundtrack. Sweet dreams are made for thee. But that was another big problem. First Class definitely felt like it was in the 60s. Days of Future Past definitely felt like it was in the 70s. This never really felt like the 80s as much as the previous films. It didn't feel like they were trying to be the 80s as the previous two movies were trying to be their respective decades. It just didn't click with me with the fashion and everything we were seeing. Oh, there's a picture of Reagan. It's the 80s. Oh, that opening prologue I really enjoyed. I would have liked to have spent more time in that world, see the horsemen of that era, the mutants of that era, and how things worked out, find out why mutants disappeared from ancient Egypt and didn't show up until the 60s in the United States, But I liked the opening sequence. I liked all that action. The action in this movie was great. It was really an epic life or death scale at times. It kept growing. It was kind of small with the Cuban Missile Crisis. Then Magneto flies a giant baseball stadium in. The whole world is disintegrating and all this stuff is flying through the air. It felt very huge, and I appreciated that. A minor quibble in the Quicksilver sequence and then the final battles at the end. A lot of time there was some obvious CGI characters instead of real actors, like in front of a green screen. And yes, I know they used CGI in the previous films, but it was kind of invisible there. Here, there was a time, Quicksilver or Psylocke or someone's jumping through the air, and it's obvious a CGI model of the actor. Again, I like this movie. I think it's the weakest of the prequels, but it's easily on par with any of the original films. Maybe not X2, but close. There's good acting by Fassbender and Isaac. The rest of the cast either didn't have enough to act with or was just phoning it in. I think everyone should see it. I think they'll like it. It's a good movie. Not great, but good. And for an X-Men fan like me, it's a must-see. That's it for now. Thank you for joining me. This is Comic Book Issues, and I'm your host, the Last Angry Geek.